Alrighty then, let's get into this Haves and the Have-Nots review of the season finale, titled Enough is Enough, which was a very apt title because everybody in the episode pretty much was done with the antics of others. So we start off with Jim, Catherine, and Wyatt. And this one was kind of like a filler scene to me, a bit redundant from what we've already seen. That Jim and Catherine are done, they're tired of sort of trying to cover up for their kids and doing the wrong thing and blah blah blah, all that stuff. So Jim tries to get it clear with Wyatt that Wyatt has confessed to murder and that the DA is going to put him in jail, into prison, with some hardened criminals that will violate him. And he's trying to make sure that Wyatt clearly understands that, which it seems like Wyatt is not getting that. It seems like Wyatt is only interested in hurting his parents and hurting Jim and exposing Jim and all that stuff. And Jim just lays it out there that you're going to be in there for the rest of your life. Is that what you really want? And do you understand that that is what you have signed up for by confessing to this crime? And Jim asked Wyatt, he said, why don't you just tell me that you hate me? And Wyatt says, I do hate you for all that you've done. I don't understand why you've done what you've done. And Jim makes no excuses for what he's done. He says he's had affairs and it just is who he is. He can't control himself. And then Catherine says that she's had some affairs of her own, one of which was with her tennis instructor, which was kind of cliche. Rich lady having an affair with her tennis instructor. Yeah, we've heard that one before. But anyway, that scene was filler. But one of the interesting part of it was that Jim asked Wyatt if he was in love with Jeffrey, and Wyatt's like, no, I'm straight and all that. I never really got that that's where that storyline was going to go, because Wyatt doesn't actually seem to have any interest in Jeffrey. I think he likes to tease Jeffrey and poke fun at Jeffrey, but I don't think he really has any interest in him. So on from there we go to Hannah. And Hannah is at her house making the funeral arrangements for Amanda. She's trying to make sure that that the flowers that Amanda liked will be there, because Catherine said that Amanda liked lilies, and that's what Hannah's trying to make sure are at the funeral. So there's a knock at the door. Hannah asks who it is, and it's Quincy. And Hannah asks again just to make sure that she heard right, and it is Quincy. And she's like, get away from my door. And he says, come to the window. Come to the window. Hannah's reluctant to do it, but she comes to the window. And there stands Quincy at the window holding Hannah's grandchild, Q. And Hannah's like, she starts like freaking out. She's like, oh my God, Q. And he says, Quincy wants her to open the door, and Hannah goes ahead and opens the door and takes her grandchild, because Quincy has held the child upside down and all this stuff. The child is screaming and Quincy's crazy. So Hannah opens the door and she grabs her grandchild and hugs him. And of course Quincy's going to say, where is Candace? Hannah knows where she is, but she doesn't tell where Candace is. So Hannah has some integrity and cares about Candace, because she does not tell where she is at, even though she knows where she is at. And even the prospect of getting her grandchild back didn't persuade her to dime Candace out. So of course Quincy takes the child back when Hannah does not give up Candace, and Hannah grabs Quincy and he slaps her across the face. And I'm like, okay, well, Benny's gonna get you for that one. And so he drives off, and Hannah is distraught. So we get back to the hotel where Maggie and David and Landon are. So Maggie is trying to clean up the mess excuse me, I'm eating, where Veronica carried on and got caught on camera smashing up the bar. She wants to get a hold of those security cameras. Or rather get a hold of the tapes, so those tapes don't get out to the press of Veronica having a big public meltdown. So David arrives and she asks him, well, you know the owner of the hotel, can you give me his number so I can get these security tapes? David gives her the number, and clearly something is wrong with David, and Maggie's trying to get the truth out of him, and he's not telling her anything. So David, he goes on and he heads home, and we'll see more of that later on in the episode. So Benny gets home to Hannah, and he brought home some dinner for Hannah, and he's telling her, well, come on, heat this up. And Hannah's trying to keep her face to one side because she doesn't want him to see the bruise. And Benny, he sees it. He knows something's up. He sees the bruise and said, what happened? And Hannah's like, I fell. And of course, she's trying to keep Benny from going out and doing something that could get him into some trouble. And Benny doesn't even have to ask who did it. He said, did he do this? Did he do this? And Hannah can't cover it. And so she just explains that he was there and that he has Q. And Benny just goes off. He's not having it. Hannah's like, well, I called the police. Let them handle it. I'm like, Hannah, you might as well forget it, because any black man whose mama has been slapped, he's not going back down. He's going to handle that stuff on his own the way he wants to. And even the mama saying, well, don't worry about it, I'm fine, I'm going to let the police handle it, even that's not going to stop me. A black man's going to handle his business. That's just the way it is. So he runs out of there, and Hannah's like, no, Benny, no, but nothing doing. She can't stop him. And so we get back to the hotel, and Candace comes down to the bar, and she's looking around like, what happened here? And because there are still obvious signs of Veronica having smashed up the bar. And Landon says, well, that was Jeffrey's mother. She went crazy on his dad. And Candace is like, why? And Landon's like, I don't know. And so Jeffrey comes in the bar, and he asks the same thing, and Landon doesn't want to say, but of course Candace says it was your mother. She went crazy. And before they can really have any sort of a conversation, here comes Melissa, and she wants Jeffrey to come upstairs with her. And once again, it's just all this foolishness going on, and Candace is like, don't go up, but Jeffrey goes on upstairs with Melissa. And of course none of this makes any sense, but Jeffrey goes up there with her, and she's trying to get him to do it to her again, like do it like he did before. And he's like, no, and he's saying what they said is true about me. I'm gay. I don't have any interest in you. And Melissa keeps pushing, please, 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 we can bring a man into the bedroom. We're looking gay porn. And I'm like, Melissa, stop it. You're making a fool out of yourself. Even if Veronica's paying you to do this, just stop it. You're making an idiot of yourself. So Candace, who knows that something was up, she's like, what's going on? So she comes up there, and she dumps Melissa's purse out, and she finds parking receipts from the hospital, and she says, why were you there so many times? And of course Melissa's not getting up on any information. And then Candace finds an ovulation stick. And clearly Melissa is trying to get pregnant by Jeffrey. And Candace is so funny because she tells Melissa, you don't have to do this. I can pimp you out. She just offers right there to pimp Melissa out. And Melissa's like, I'm not a whore. And Candace says, well, believe me, this is the move of a hoe. And so Melissa, who has disrobed and all that, she covers herself up and she gets out of there. And Candace is like she can't eat. She's trying to figure out what's going on. And the phone rings and it's Veronica and she's sounding like some crazy person. Son. And she says, so you threw Melissa out the room. And Melissa didn't waste no time tattling to Veronica. She called her right up and told her what was up. So Veronica wants Jeffrey to come see her. And she hangs up before he can answer. And Candace is like, don't go over there. Don't go over there. Don't go over there. That woman is going to be the death of you if you don't shut her down. But really, Jeffrey did need to go over there because that was his opportunity to shut her down. Okay, let's see. Let me check my notes, make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay. Benny goes to see Warlock, and he tells Warlock what happened. Warlock, Quincy slapped my mama, and Warlock's, oh, hell no. And Warlock gets on the phone and calls one of his lookouts because they have been looking for Quincy, and he tells Warlock that Quincy had been hanging out at some strip club on Lewis. So Benny gets in the car and heads over there. So then we switch over to Jeffrey and Veronica, and they have this really, really intense scene. And Veronica's being delusional, like, Mama, this is a nice girl. Why don't you wanna? And she goes all into her delusions, talking about Jeffrey wanted to play with dolls and wear dresses. And when he was growing up, Jeffrey says, what are you talking about? I never wanted to wear dresses or play with dolls. And she says, you might as well have. You want to be a girl. And then she starts getting real detailed about what you want a man. You won't feel his mustache pressed up against yours and and all this stuff. And I'm like, you're detailing all this stuff. And then she said, that is disgusting. And I'm like, you detailed all this stuff to disgust you, really, Veronica? And Jeffrey's done. He calls her, and I wrote it down, he calls her evil, wicked, and stupid. And she's like, you won't talk to me that way anymore. And then he calls her simple, just like his dad did. And he just lets her have it. He says, you're not allowed to hurt me anymore. And he says he hates himself for trying to trying to love her or for caring about what she thought of him, all of that stuff. And he just tells her to go to hell, and he leaves. And then we go back to Benny. Benny arrives at that strip club, and Benny wastes no time. Quincy comes out of the strip club, gets in his car. Benny revs up his car, bashes it into Quincy's car. He drags Quincy out of the car and proceeds to beat him unconscious. And Tyler Perry borrowed from himself a little bit, because if you remember from Daddy's Little Girls, the lead character beat up the drug dealer. He crashed his car into the drug dealer's car, where the baby mama was also at. She was also in the car, and he pulled the drug dealer out and beat him down. And so Tyler Perry borrowed from himself with that scene. And Quincy had that beat down coming. I don't think Quincy got a punch in there. Benny just he had nothing for Benny. Benny had him cornered and beat him down. Okay, and so we go back to David and Veronica. Now, David and Veronica, they're at home. David has come home. Why he came home, I don't know. She warns him, you won't see morning if you stay here. If you stay here, you are going to need a doctor. But apparently David doesn't believe her threats. And David, once again, he says, you sent a murderer to beat up our son. But yet David says that, but he is willing to stay in the house with someone who would send a murderer to beat up their child. David was willing to stay there. She threatened him. She threatened him, not so subtly, with harm if he stayed in that house. But he stayed there anyway. So David goes on upstairs, and we'll see what happens with that a little bit later on. Checking my notes. So we get to Jeffrey and Landon. So Jeffrey has called Landon to his room, and they have a little bit of banter and all that. Yeah, okay, blah, 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 all that. And so basically that scene ends with Jeffrey pushing Landon on the bed, and like Landon's like really surprised at Jeffrey being so aggressive, but basically Jeffrey gets on Landon. And then we also have Candace and Oscar, and I guess Candace has got nothing better left to do in this episode but to go after this guy and seduce him. So that's what she does. And just she goes all dominant, tough, and get on your knees, all that stuff. All that stuff. And speaking of get on your knees, that's what Veronica asked David if Maggie did her. Did she get on your knees for you? Did you get on her knees for you? And all that. And I'm like, Veronica, stop it. And Veronica was drunk. She's not supposed to be drinking. So Veronica was drunk throughout her scenes with Jeffrey and David. And despite her being so cruel to Jeffrey, Jeffrey was still concerned about her drinking. So basically what was left was Veronica and Benny. Now Benny calls her up and says, I'm in jail. I got in a fight. I need someone to get me out. So he had her number from the time that she got him out of all that mess that David and Jim got him into with the drugs in Candace's car in the first season. So that's how Benny had a connection to Veronica. So she goes and springs him from jail, and she's like, well, I'm too drunk to drive, and so she lets Benny drive. So they're driving along the way, and Veronica says, pull over. Benny pulls over, and Veronica looks at him and says, my husband is cheating on me. And Benny's like, I'm sorry. And then she moves in toward Benny and starts making out with him, and Benny's like, well, I don't know, maybe I should do. Kind of like his mother would be like trying to be proper and resist, but except Benny, he does not pull back. He just lets it happen. Veronica's married and all that, and so that's probably what was weighing on his mind. Like, this is a married woman, I shouldn't be doing this, but he let it happen. That was a surprising scene, although I think that was actually a good scene because there is some chemistry between the two characters. Okay, and so he brings Veronica home, and after that, and he's like, shit, I'll just bring the car back in the morning. She tells him, keep it. I'm like, Benny, you've got another car from a woman. I'm like, but this time it's kind of like you got a car as a reward for. So I guess Hannah's got 2 children who get rewards for using their body. Although Benny didn't intend to do that, he still got paid for walking, if that is indeed what they did. Well, they may as well have done that. So, wrapping up with Hannah and Candace. Hannah comes to see Candace as Candace has this guy Oscar in the bed. So Candace gets up and answers the door, and of course, Hannah is trying to find Benny. She says Benny went to find Quincy, and because Quincy was at my house, and Candace sees the bruise on Hannah's face, and she says, "Did Quincy do that to you?" And Hannah says, "Yes." So that was the cliffhanger with them, and the ultimate cliffhanger was Veronica. Veronica comes home from bailing Benny out and bossing him, and David's in bed sleep. So Veronica, she comes in the bedroom with this big gas can, pours gasoline all around the bed, lights a cigarette, then drops the match. And we can see flames start illuminating all around David and the bed. And we can see the glow of flames on David's face. Veronica just goes outside, sits down on the steps like, hey, nothing wrong here, just doing what I had to do. And she's bonkers, way out of her mind, and that was the cliffhanger. Veronica wants to make David crispy. Oh, and I forgot to mention, Veronica claims that Melissa is pregnant and that she's going to be a grandmother. So there's going to be a lot going on next season. I want to thank you for watching my reviews, and rate and comment, and take care, and deuces.